So I'd like to talk about getting in and out of headstand once you're ready to do that away from the wall. Now, one of the things that Tamara is going to show is how much you need to shift your hips away from your legs to balance the weight of your legs as you go up and down. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the foundation for your headstand, because it's tremendously important that you have the correct foundation so you can practice the actions that will protect your neck. Your neck, of course, is the vulnerable body part in headstand because you're taking all of the weight of your body onto your neck. So we'll begin by interlacing the fingers all the way up to the webbing. And then you want to tuck your bottom pinky under so that when you press, you put your hands down, you have a flush and flat surface. The reason that's important is because when you place your head on the floor, there's a tendency to collapse the shoulders, and obviously you can see that creates compression in my neck. Instead, you want to root down from wrist to elbow and draw your shoulders away from your ears. Now, the other piece that's really important with this foundation is that your elbows are truly shoulder distance apart, not wider. Imagine me in a headstand right now. If my elbows are wider than shoulder distance, I'm much more likely to have that compression, that congestion at the base of the neck. So elbow shoulder distance apart, rooting down from elbow to wrist, and that rooting down, if this was the ceiling, is what pulls the shoulders away from your ears, lengthening and protecting your neck. Now the other piece is what part of your head to put on the floor. And a nice way to find that is to put your thumbs in your ears and have your middle fingers meet on the top of your head. That spot is where you put your head in most headstands, barring some significant difference in the structure of your neck. And you'll notice that that spot is the same spot as when you take the heel of your hand and the bridge of your nose and take your middle finger back. They meet in that same spot. Final piece is that when you put your head down, you want to make sure that you keep your wrists upright as opposed to letting them fall open. When the wrists fall open, the inner wrist is not in contact with the floor, and it's by pressing down through that inner wrist that you'll really be able to draw your shoulders away from your ears, keeping that length in your neck and keeping your neck healthy. So let's take a look at Tamara. Interlacing the fingers up to the webbing, and then tucking the bottom pinky under. She's going to put her hands down, making sure that her elbows are no wider than shoulder distance apart. And in fact, it's sometimes useful to start a tiny bit narrower than shoulder distance apart, because inevitably there is a little bit of a splay when you come up. Now she's also touching her thumbs because that's a very useful way to make sure that your hands don't fall open. When the hands fall open, the thumbs are no longer touching. And when she puts her head down in that spot that I showed a moment ago, you want to make sure that you don't put it down so close to your hands that you actually knock your hands open. And Tam, would you show what that is? So that's smushing the head into the hands and knocking the hands open, and then come back to the correct position. Beautiful. So that the crown of the head is on the floor, but her wrists are able to remain upright. Inner wrist stacked over outer wrist. Okay, now watch what happens. She tucks her toes under. She lifts her hips, pressing down from wrist to elbow, lifting the shoulders, and then see how much Tamara has to shift her hips back so that she can balance the weight of her legs as she comes up. The hips go towards her hands and even past her hands to balance her legs as she comes up. But then as she comes up, she gets straighter and straighter, hips moving into the midline as the legs also go to the midline. And you can go about another inch with your legs. Beautiful. And then we root down from wrist to elbow so that you can lift your shoulders. Soften the front ribs so you're not in a back bend, and really reach up through the balls of your big toes as if you were zipping up your inner thighs and energetically pressing up through the ball of the big toe to keep the legs lively. Make sure the entire time you're in this headstand, you're rooting down from wrist to elbow, the whole forearm pressing down to create that lifting the shoulders that allows the neck to stay long. When you come down, take an inhale for length, and then as you exhale, start to shift your hips back again. And the hips really need to go back quite far so that the weight of your hips on this side can balance the weight of your legs on that side. And that way you can lower down with control. The control is key so that nothing herky-jerky happens to compromise your neck. Once you come down, that was beautiful, drop your knees to the floor and immediately come to child's pose. Sometimes we're tempted when we come out of headstand to sit up and kind of check and see what's happened with the neck, but it's really important that you instead come directly to child's pose. Drop the flesh of your buttocks towards the floor. Let your shoulders drape on either side of your knees so that you can broaden across your upper back. And then it's also nice to come to downward facing dog, so go ahead and reach your arms forward. When you come to downward facing, you can let your head release completely. So when you've had weight on your neck, you then want to lengthen it by letting the head hang freely. And it can also be nice, and Tamara, let's show this, to turn the hands out just slightly in this down dog, because it allows for a little bit more of a release in your neck. Once you've taken a couple of breaths here, you can walk your hands back to your feet. And once they get there, you can clasp your elbows and let yourself dangle in Uttanasana. And if there's any strain in your lower back when you do that, bend your knees enough so that there isn't any at all. The whole idea is to just let your head hang freely so there's no tension in the neck. Shirshasana, headstand.